Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you, as always, for stopping by. Home Thoughts, the harder the life, the finer the person. Wilfred Thesiger. His books I read, found them in the Tiger Library, and I must say, thoroughly enjoyed reading them. Somewhere in Mwingi, Kenya, the beautifully starred night skyline paints a surreal silhouette of a giant baobab tree. That's from Ray Matata. And a wonderful photograph as well. It's one of the things I enjoy here. You get out and you see these extraordinary starlit skies. That took me back to Thomas Pynchon again, Gravity's Rainbow, which has been on my mind because it's all about rockets, amongst other things. I dream that I've found us both again, with spring so many strangers' lives away, and we so free out walking by the sea, with someone else's paper words to say. They took us at the gates of green return, too lost by then to stop and ask them why. Do children meet again? Does any trace remain along the superhighways of July? Political Reflections take a look at this of Houston from the air via the Associated Press. Took me back to something I wrote about global warming in November 2015, and I said we have created massive interference in the cosmic tuning phenomenon. From Houston to Mumbai to Niger, we're seeing floods everywhere, all within the past week. Sergei Lavrov said to Israel, "No one is going to attack you, relax." That's not even in question. I don't think anyone's capable of it. The Saudi trillions, Malise Ruthven in the London Review of Books is well worth a read in full. It made perfect sense that the first port of call on President Trump's first foreign trip in May was Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the world's second largest oil producer after Russia, the world's biggest military spender as a proportion of GDP, the main sponsor of Islamist fighting groups across Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, and Iraq, the leader of a coalition in a devastating war against Yamani rebels now in its third year, is a country one can do business with, even as the most ardent criminologists in the West struggle to understand it. It is a place often defined by its contradictions, in which tribal codes of desert and oasis, puritanical, patriarchal, frugal and austere, coexist and frequently clash with lavish displays of wealth and such emblems of modernity as air-conditioned shopping malls, designer boutiques and six-lane highways flashing with supercharged vehicles exclusively driven by men. Trump returned from his visit with a promise he claimed of a $350 billion in Saudi spending on American armaments over the next 10 years, with 110 billion US right away, of benefit particularly to Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Raytheon. The State Department celebrated the deal as supporting the long-term security of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf region in the face of malign Iranian influence and Iranian-related threats. But in the last few months, we have seen a series of changes in the kingdom that make its future more unpredictable than ever. At the beginning of June, Saudi Arabia severed diplomatic ties with its neighbor Qatar, demanding that its Al Jazeera network be shut down. Then 2 weeks later, there was what appeared to be a palace coup. Since the death in 1953 of the modern kingdom's founder, Abdulaziz Al Saud, generally known as Ibn Saud, succession has passed down the line of his sons. The present King Salman, reportedly Ibn Saud's 25th son, inherited the throne in 2015 on the death of his half-brother Abdullah, and is close to being the last of his generation. At 81, Salman is in fragile health. He has had 2 strokes and suffers from Alzheimer's. On 21st June, the doting king promoted his favourite son, the 31-year-old Prince Mohammed bin Salman, widely known by the initials MBS, to the position of Crown Prince, putting him in line to be the first of the 3rd generation Ibn Saud's grandsons to occupy the throne. According to the New York Times, MBS's elevation at the expense of his older cousin, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Nayef, known as MBN, was the result of a well-executed plot. MBN was highly regarded by the US. On the night of June 20th, the eve of Eid al-Fitr festival that ends the holy month of Ramadan, MBN was summoned along with other senior princes for an audience with the king. Shortly before midnight, courtiers answering to MBS, who was already chief of the royal court as well as the world's youngest minister of defense, removed the phones and pressured him to relinquish his posts. MBN at first refused but eventually gave in and now is said to be under palace arrest. As one commentator tweeted after the coup, bin Zayed has become the real ruler of Egypt and Saudi Arabia, the 2 largest Arab countries. Congratulations to the people of these 2 countries. In this scenario, MBS, now abetted by Trump, appears as the useful idiot. Saudi Arabia has consistently accused the Houthis of being Iranian proxies, a charge that was once untrue, but which effectively had the force of a prediction, since as the war has ground on, Iran has stepped up its military aid to the rebels, partly to prevent total devastation. The Crown Prince engineered this dispute not to punish Qatar for its financing of terrorism, saying Saudi Arabia, it's a hypocritical comment coming from the Saudis, whose own citizens have provided funding to radical extremists over the years, but rather to end Qatar's independent foreign policy, and especially its support for the Muslim Brotherhood and its ties with Iran. Simply put, the Saudis want to turn Qatar into a vassal state, as they had done with Bahrain, as part of their plan to establish Saudi hegemony over the entire Persian Gulf. We are a primary target for the Iranian regime, MBS said in May, shortly before Trump's visit, accusing the Iranians of seeking to take over Islamic holy sites in Saudi Arabia. We won't wait for the battle to be in Saudi Arabia. Instead, we'll work so that the battle is for them in Iran. London Stock Exchange, this is Saudi Aramco, in its desperation for the prize, has shown that it is perfectly prepared to bend the rules in Aramco's favour. Even so, a public listing at the level Saudi Arabia expects depends on the price of oil rising or at least not falling further. It also depends on the Saudis' oil reserves being quite as large as they claim. In the face of all this uncertainty, Nick Butler, an ex-BP executive, recently suggested in the Financial Times that Saudi Arabia's best option may be a private sale to China. The kingdom is more trivial money worries too. The Al Saud are a royal family like no other. There are thousands of them, descending from the 22 wives Ibn Saud had while technically observing the Sharia requirement of 4 wives max at any one time. He was father to the nation in more than a metaphorical sense. In the context of a tribal society, these prudential intermarriages had the benefit of binding together a number of different groups at a time when Ibn Saud was merely the head of a coalition of tribes who founded the modern kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 1932 after he invaded the Hijaz. It's an extraordinary bill in detail in this article. In addition to the stipends, senior princes enrich themselves via off-budget programs that are widely viewed as sources of royal rake-offs. The largest of these, according to the cable, was thought to relate to the holy shrines of Mecca and Medina, around $5 billion annually, saying that Mecca is now largely a Las Vegas, the site of Muhammad's first wife's house, where it is believed he received his first revelations and where 5 of his children were born, is now occupied by a row of public toilets. Then talking about surveillance, repression, tortures, realities that shape everyday life. This is a country where 12,000 to 13,000 political prisoners and prisoners of opinion rot in overcrowded, violent jails. A country where repression is organized by security forces that report to a handful of senior princes, out of the reach of an abrupt, arbitrary judicial system. A country where physical punishment, torture, and the threat thereof, and the absence of transparent and fair procedures are the alpha and omega of the judiciary and the ultima ratio of political acquiescence. Talking about the strategy towards the Shia minority, which is an open rebellion, essentially. And, I can't agree more. I think that's the most accurately written article about Saudi Arabia as it stands. They spend enormous amounts of money in order to whitewash their reputation all over the world. I go back to an article I wrote on the 8th of May when I quoted the now Crown Prince, who said, "How can I communicate with them while they prepare for the arrival of Al-Mahdi al-Muntazar?" Put up a photograph of him. And as I wrote in that article, reserves have been depleted from Abuja to Riyadh, from Luanda to Caracas, and in all the oil-producing capitals in the world. The OPEC go-go days of Sheikh Yamani, his prayer beads and Delphic pronouncements belong to yesteryear. Put up a photograph of him. In August 2015, I wrote the end is nigh for crude oil and oil producers from Caracas to Luanda, from Riyadh to Abuja. My point is that I think, the war in Yemen is a distraction and completely the wrong thing to do. The Yemenis have seen off other people before. They're hardly going to capitulate here. It's a quagmire, and they're even looking as if they're having to withdraw from Syria. The Guardian has an article today, the Saudis don't care about Syria anymore. It's all Qatar for them. Syria is lost. Has Netanyahu defeated the Palestinians? There's a very interesting article saying the likelihood of his being indicted and speculation as to his longevity in office reaching unprecedented levels. Netanyahu struck back. In a support rally convened by his Likud party, Netanyahu accused the thought police in the media, together with the left and supported by the Palestinians, of conducting an unprecedented, obsessive witch hunt campaign against him and his family. Their goal, he claimed, was to stage a government overthrow to topple the national camp. Both the style and substance of Netanyahu's fiery rhetoric should have sounded very familiar to anyone in America and not asleep in the past 7 months. Netanyahu's assertion that he is not merely buying time in Israel's conflict with the Palestinians to improve the terms of an eventual and inevitable compromise. Netanyahu is laying claim to something different. The possibility of ultimate victory, the permanent and definitive defeat of the Palestinians, their national and collective goals. In over a decade as Prime Minister, Netanyahu has consistently and unequivocally rejected any plans or practical steps that even begin to address Palestinian aspirations. Netanyahu is all about perpetuating and exacerbating the conflict, not about managing it, let alone resolving it. He seeks out long-neglected scars to poke anew and hones in on what appears most existentially angst-ridden. We have, or so it seems, now entered the phase in which Netanyahu wants to own the new paradigm and to claim victory. And in answer to that question, yes, he has. Put up a photograph of him. The US has been talking to North Korea and paying them extortion money for 25 years. Talking is not the answer, said Trump. This was immediately rebutted by his defense secretary, and clearly Tillerson's comment over the weekend that he speaks for himself is relevant and extraordinary when you think about it. South Korea and US have flown bombers over the Korean peninsula, but essentially I think Kim has them where he wants them. Brutal but spot on, the incredible shrinking president. This is an infographic from Axios. Here, have a look at this brutal cartoon from Brooks Times. The AFL-CIO boss Richard Trumka, White House is split between racists and Wall Streeters, he said. If you haven't had a listen to this documentary by Adam Curtis called Hypernormalization, please take a listen. The FT has an interesting piece about Trump's debt to Deutsche Bank and a lot of detail about it. Deutsche seems to have come through for him on a pretty regular basis as a person involved in the refinancing of the General Motors building in Manhattan, one of the bank's breakthrough US deals with Mr. Trump in the late 1990s. They stepped into a void as another restructuring expert. And I wrote about this in August when I said Deutsche Bank loans were surely mirror transactions. Any financial expert will tell you that President Trump's financial affairs are a smoking gun. Deutsche Bank loans were surely mirror transactions, where Deutsche Bank was a commission agent interposed between Trump and the real lender. All those sales where Trump proclaimed himself a genius because they were so off-market, we would all be incredulous, were essentially just that, incredible. There is a prima facie case here, and it's in plain sight. Once the biggest proponent in the Africa Rising meme, the African Development Group, is now publishing papers calling the slogan detached from reality. Japanese Prime Minister tweeted a message and a photograph of himself with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Theresa May. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar below 119 at 118.93. Dollar index 92.91. Japanese yen 110.60. That's been a big move, since that rocket was fired by the South Koreans. Swiss franc 0.9635. The pound is at 128.87. The Australian dollar is at 0.7886. Indian rupee 64.005. South Korean won 11.2743. The Rial 316.03, Egyptian pound 17.6420, South African rand just around the 13 level. Take a look at this dollar index chart from FIB 3138. We've seen a bit of a rebound, but we need to regain the 93.50 level on that index. Euro versus dollar, take a look at this chart. This is a small correction in what has been a huge bull trend over the last few months. September gasoline futures through $200. This is a consequence of the Harvey storm. Gold at 1306.50. Last trading we got as high as 1325. We need to probably defend at levels just below 1300. Tea commodity ascending wedge on copper. He's been bearish for a number of sessions. Take a look at the chart. I like this Taj Mahal at night with a bright full moon. This photo was taken by Elliot Elisofo. Venezuela cut deeper into junk by Fitch on probable default, lowered Venezuela's grade deeper into junk, saying additional US sanctions increase the probability of non-payment. We've been speaking about this for a while. 8th of May, I said reserves have been depleted from Abuja to Riyadh, from Luanda to Caracas, and in all the oil-producing capitals of the world. On that note, the Angolan oil minister says the nation needs crude to rebound to $60. It's not going to happen. We've been seeing signs from the market that prices could reach $60 by the end of the year. I don't think they've simply kicked the can down the road, and now they're going to have to deal with it. Republic of Congo bonds have surged on news investors will be paid. Republic of Congo's Eurobonds rose to the highest in more than 7 weeks after a contractor claiming money from the government ended an attempt to block a coupon payment through a US court. The price on the $363 million of amortizing securities due in June 2029 rose about 7 cents to 78 cents of the dollar. South African all share has edged off a record high but remains 10.89% higher this year. Dollar versus rand took 13.0164 when I checked last, and I'm expecting a gradual firming in the rand. Egyptian pound 17.64. Space Now's Nigeria Nightlight Index, which measures light intensity and provides an indication of electricity usage, rose 29% year on year in that period. Nigeria's battered economy improved between April and June, at least according to satellite data. San Francisco-based Space Now's Nigeria Nightlight Index, which measures light intensity and provides an indication of electricity usage, rose 29% year on year in that period, the first time it showed a positive reading since the final 3 months of 2015. Nigerian oil shares up 32.58% so far this year. The IMF has approved a one-year extension of Ghana's $918 million credit facility program. The Ghana Stock Exchange is up 40.4% year to date. Kenya's opposition says audit of electoral system shows misuse. The court's 7-judge panel will make a ruling by September the 1st on the opposition's petition to annul the election results. Should Kenyatta's victory be overturned, the East African nation would have to hold new elections within 60 days. My question is, where's the beef? It was a fishing expedition in the court. Really we should have understood that after that first press conference in Caramel, where they used an ex-disc jockey, a nephew of Rilo Odinga, to make the cyber hacking case. And basically a lot of, particularly international investors, lost confidence from that moment. Airtel Kenya ended the 2016 financial year with a 45 billion shilling debt load. How they're ever going to get out of that. A pension fund survey by Zamara shows the schemes on average raised equity holdings to 21.5% at the end of June compared to 19.1% in March. And this is what I've been talking about, that they've largely not participated in this rebound and that they are going to be the catalyst for the next leg higher in equity prices. Nairobi all shares up 28.4% this year. Liberty Kenya reported first half earnings per share accelerated 19.697% higher. Gross earned premium revenue was up 2.456%. Investment income was up 16.077%. Total income was up 7.173%. Claims and policyholder benefits payable, that went up 28.312%, which was quite a steep increase. Results of other operating activities was up 11.6%. Profit for the period was up 18.87%. EPS up 19.697%. Cash and cash equivalents also better, up 26.748%. They said gross earned premiums increased by 2%, with the Kenyan operations exceeding the prior period in the first half of the year compared to 2016. Tanzania business, however, faced a challenging beginning to the year due to a continued difficult trading environment, further aggravated by competitive pressures. The outlook for the remainder of 2017 remains positive, barring any unexpected fundamental changes in legislative and macroeconomic environment. Profit after tax up 19%, investment income up 16%, EPS up 19%. It's a well and conservatively managed balance sheet, and further uplift in investment income and mark-to-market gains expected. TransCentury reported first half earnings per share was negative 2 shillings and 88 cents. Turnover was down 27.686%. They made a loss of 594.95 million versus a loss of 241.727 million last time. Profit before income tax swung into loss 1.275 billion. Basic and diluted EPS negative 2 shillings and 88 cents versus 4 shillings and 97 cents last time. They talked about a decline in revenue by 28%. Group's performance in the first half of the year was affected by the lingering effects of constrained access to credit lines in 2016, which slowed our project acquisition for most of 2016. group remains strongly anchored on its competitive advantage that includes unrivaled capacity in the power division and a strong pipeline of projects in the engineering division. Demand from our markets remains strong, and we are keenly focused on growing our order book, as well as ongoing work on restructuring to further adjust our cost structure. An area of priority for the group remains restructuring of the balance sheet to improve the capital structure. They have found an anchor shareholder, and now the challenge is to execute. Express Kenya, which is worth the grand total of $1.38 million, reported a first half EPS loss of 76 cents a share. I cannot recall when they last made a profit. NSE 20 is up 26.76% so far this year. And that's it. Thank you for stopping by.